I kicked my abusive mother out at midnight. After she screamed my wife was trying to ill the baby over juice. I never thought I'd be in therapy at my age, but when I met Emily, I realized how much emotional baggage I was carrying from my past. Emily's parents were constantly belittling her, favoring her brother, and making her feel like she wasn't good enough. I thought I had it bad with my ex, but Emily's childhood was a constant series of blows to her self-esteem. It was obvious that she was struggling, but she didn't know how to talk about it. So, after a long talk, we agreed to go to therapy together. I wasn't just trying to help her. I needed to confront my own emotional scars from escaping an abusive relationship. Our therapist helped us open up about everything we had been through. For Emily, the constant criticism, body shaming, and lack of validation from her parents were still fresh wounds. She'd grown up being told she wasn't good enough, that nothing she did was worth celebrating. After months of work, we made the difficult decision to go no contact with her parents. Her mom and dad, even after pretending to change, had no place in our lives. They had proven time and time again that they weren't going to offer the love and support Emily needed. We started healing, slowly but surely. Emily began to rebuild her confidence, and I found that I was finally free from the ghosts of my past. But we still had a lot of work to do. Have you ever given someone a second chance because you hoped they had changed? How did it go? When Emily found out she was pregnant, she had this hope. She believed that maybe, just maybe, her mom could change. She had seen all the stories, heard about people reconciling after years of tension, and had convinced herself that her mother might finally be the supportive, loving parent she always wished for. I wasn't convinced. After all, her parents had been emotionally neglectful and manipulative for most of her life. But Emily wanted to give it one more shot. She wanted her mother to be involved in the pregnancy, hoping for a fresh start, even though deep down we both knew it wasn't going to be easy. After some back and forth discussions, Emily invited her mom to visit us for a few days. She assured me that she could handle it. "It'll be fine," she said. "Maybe she's changed. Maybe she wants to try again." I wasn't so sure, but I respected her decision. I understood the need for closure, for that tiny shred of hope that things could be different. The first day of the visit seemed fine. Emily's mom brought gifts: baby clothes, a cute little onesie, and a toy rattle. She asked questions about the nursery, about the baby's health, and about Emily's progress in the pregnancy. Everything seemed normal at first. For the first few hours, there were even moments of laughter, small talk about the baby, and discussions about future plans. But then shit started coming out. It wasn't immediate. At first, the comments were subtle. Her mom made a remark about the size of Emily's belly, something along the lines of, "You're not too big for 7 months, are you? Your brother's wife looked much smaller at that stage." Emily laughed it off, but I could see her face tighten. She tried to brush it off, but I knew she wasn't feeling great about it. As the visit wore on, the remarks became more frequent. Her mother started critiquing the baby clothes Emily had chosen, calling them impractical and not the best quality. She questioned some of the things Emily had planned for the nursery, suggesting that things could be done better. There was no malicious intent in her words, but they were still condescending and dismissive. It was as if nothing Emily did could ever meet her standards. I could see Emily starting to retreat inwardly, becoming quieter, apologizing for the smallest things. I was furious. Emily had worked so hard to get where she was, emotionally, mentally, and here was her mom, once again, undermining everything she had accomplished. This was exactly why we had cut ties in the first place. It didn't matter how many times Emily hoped for change. Her mom would always find a way to put her down. Later that evening, as we sat down for dinner, things took a darker turn. Emily's mom looked at her with a dismissive tone and said, "I don't know why you're so worried about the baby clothes. You're going to be huge anyway. Maybe you should watch what you eat." The words stung like a slap in the face. Emily froze, her hand gripping the edge of her glass. I saw the panic in her eyes, the same look she used to have when she was a child and would try to hide from her mom's criticisms. It was heartbreaking. I couldn't stand it anymore. I knew I had to say something. "Enough," I said, my voice firm. Both of them looked at me in surprise. "You're not going to speak to her like that, especially now." Emily's mother stared at me for a moment, then shifted uncomfortably in her chair. I could tell she wasn't used to being challenged. Emily's mom had always been the kind of person who believed her way was the only way. But I wasn't going to let her tear down my wife. Not now. Not ever. "I'm not saying she can't speak for herself," I continued. "But if you can't be supportive, it's time for you to leave." There was an awkward silence that followed. Emily's mom looked at me, her face flushed with anger. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but nothing came out. The tension between the three of us was unbearable. But Emily, bless her heart, spoke up then. Mom, I've been trying to give you another chance, but I can't keep doing this. I'm not a child anymore, and I won't apologize for my choices. If you want to be part of this, you need to change your attitude. If not, I'll have to ask you to leave. Her mom's face turned pale, and she stood up quickly, muttering something under her breath about how she had to go. She grabbed her things and left the house without another word. The door slammed behind her, and the house felt eerily quiet. Emily didn't cry. She didn't say anything. She just stood there, her shoulders tense, her lips pressed into a thin line. I didn't want it to be like this, she whispered after a long silence. I wanted her to change, to be better. But she's always been like this, hasn't she? I didn't know what to say. She was right. Her mom had never really changed. She had just pretended to. I wasn't angry at Emily for trying. I was angry at her mom for dragging Emily into the same cycle of disappointment. I'm sorry, I said, taking her hand in mine. I wish you didn't have to go through this, but I'm here, always. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Thank you. I didn't expect anything from her, but I thought maybe this time it would be different. We sat there for a long while, silently processing everything that had just happened. Emily's mom had left, but the damage had been done. That night, Emily and I talked for hours about everything. She knew her mother hadn't really changed, but she had hoped that she could get the relationship she had always wanted. I understood that hope, but it hurt to see her so disappointed again. Would you have ended the visit early or stayed quiet like the wife? What would you have done? Things were quiet for a few days after my mother-in-law left. Emily and I had spent the next few nights in a bubble of our own, trying to regain some normalcy. It was strange, to be honest. There was this strange calmness between us, but we both knew it wasn't over. We both knew there would be more. There always was. But I also saw something in Emily. There was a certain lightness in her, something I hadn't seen in months. At 7 months pregnant, Emily was experiencing all the normal aches and pains, but there was still a sense of excitement about the baby, the future, even with all the chaos her family had caused. She was focused on the nursery, on making everything perfect. I tried my best to help, to offer support in ways that mattered, but it wasn't always easy. One night, around 11:30 p.m., Emily suddenly craved apple juice. It wasn't anything dramatic, she just wanted it, and I was happy to go get it for her. She had been getting more cravings as her pregnancy progressed, but this one was different. I went to the fridge and grabbed the bottle, poured it into a glass, and handed it to her with a smile. That was when it hit. Emily's mom had been gone for days, but I swear I could feel her presence in the room. Maybe it was the anticipation. Maybe it was the fact that I had been bracing for the next battle. And sure enough, the next bombshell was about to drop. I heard the front door open. Emily's mother had returned. I hadn't expected her back so soon. My first instinct was to go to the door, but before I could even stand up, I heard the angry voice. Are you serious? My mother-in-law yelled from the doorway. What kind of mother are you? You're drinking apple juice again? I froze. I had heard her yelling before, but this was different. There was something much more vicious in her voice, something that didn't belong in our home. It wasn't about concern for the baby. It was about control. It was about making Emily feel small again. It was the same thing she had always done. Only now it was worse because there was a baby involved. What's wrong with apple juice? Emily asked, her voice trembling. She was visibly shaken like a deer in headlights, not sure what was coming next. You really don't care, do you? Her mom sneered. You're putting the baby at risk for no reason. Drinking that sugary stuff is the least of your problems. I stood up. My protective instincts kicked in. Enough! This is not happening tonight. I'm sorry, Emily said softly, looking like she was about to break down. I didn't mean to. No, stop, I interjected, cutting her off before her mom could say anything else. Get out. I didn't know what came over me, but I wasn't going to let this go any longer. I didn't care how late it was. I didn't care what anyone thought. The moment her mother opened her mouth again to accuse Emily of something so trivial, I'd had enough. I turned to Emily's mother. You need to leave, now. Her face twisted with rage. You think you can throw me out? I'm the one who's been there for you, for both of you. You're making a mistake. No, I said firmly, walking toward the door and standing between them. You're making a mistake. You're not welcome here anymore. You're no longer part of our lives. Her eyes widened in disbelief. You can't do this. You're nothing but a... Leave, now, I said, my voice calm but unwavering. If you don't leave, I'll call the police. For a moment, she just stood there, stunned. But then the fury in her eyes flared. She turned and grabbed her things, muttering something under her breath, but I didn't care to listen anymore. Emily stood silently, watching her mother gather her things, her face a mix of sadness and relief. As Emily's mom stormed out, slamming the door behind her, I finally allowed myself to breathe. But that wasn't the end of it. I knew the battle wasn't over. This was just the beginning. I turned to Emily. She was sitting on the couch, her hands shaking. I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. I went to her and sat beside her, wrapping my arms around her. "You okay?" I asked softly. She nodded, her head resting on my shoulder. "I'm sorry you had to do that. I never wanted it to come to this." "You don't have to apologize. She crossed a line and I'm not going to let her hurt you anymore. She doesn't get to come in here and disrespect you, not after everything we've been through." "I never wanted to have to choose," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But now, I don't know what to do." I kissed her forehead. "We're going to be okay. We have each other and we have the baby. That's all that matters." The weight of the situation hit me hard. I knew there would be backlash. I knew her family wouldn't understand, and they would probably try to make me the bad guy. But at that moment, I didn't care. I had protected my wife and our unborn child, and that was all that mattered. Later, when I checked my phone, I had several missed calls and messages from her family. They were angry, accusing me of being cruel, of throwing Emily's mother out without any warning. They painted me as the villain, the one who had crossed the line. But I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. Finally, it was over. The walls that had been slowly closing in on us for years had finally come down. I knew it wasn't the end of the fight, but it was a step forward. And that was all I could ask for. If you were in his shoes, would you have kicked her out that night? Or handled it differently? Emily and I spent the next few days in a strange state of limbo. There was relief, yes, but there was also an overwhelming sense of anxiety. The phone calls, the messages, the constant barrage from her family, and it was like I couldn't escape the storm. I thought that by kicking her mother out, I was protecting Emily, but in reality, I was only setting off. We tried to return to some normalcy. Emily focused on preparing the nursery, working on the baby's room. I tried to keep the peace, offering to help with whatever she needed. But despite the peace in our home, there was a tension between us that hadn't been there before. Emily wasn't angry with me. She was grateful for me standing up for her, but she was also torn. The pain of losing her mother, the person who should have supported her through everything, was taking its toll. "I should have known better," she said one evening, as we sat together on the couch. Her head rested on my shoulder, and I could feel the sadness emanating from her. "I should have cut her out of my life years ago. But I kept hoping that one day she would change." "You gave her chances," I said gently. "But some people never change. And you're not responsible for their actions, Em. You did what you needed to do to protect yourself, and that's all that matters now." Emily nodded, but I could tell she wasn't convinced. It was like she was grieving the relationship she'd never had with her mom, the relationship she had always dreamed of. I understood that. I did. But at the same time, I knew that the woman who had come into our home that night was never going to change. She was toxic, and Emily had spent years giving her second chances. We decided to go back to therapy. It was one of the hardest things we had done as a couple. We had worked through so much already, but now we were faced with a new level of complexity. Emily was struggling to reconcile her feelings of hurt and loss with the need to protect herself and our baby. "I didn't want to believe that she couldn't change," Emily admitted in therapy. "But I guess I knew deep down that she was never going to be the mother I needed her to be." The therapist nodded, guiding Emily through the difficult realization. "Sometimes the people who should be there for us are the ones who cause the most pain. But recognizing that, accepting it, and then setting boundaries is the most loving thing you can do for yourself." We spent weeks working through our emotions, discussing the future, the boundaries we would set with her family, and how we would move forward. We even started discussing how to protect our baby from the kind of toxicity that Emily had endured. And through it all, I stood by her, offering my unwavering support. But I knew that this was far from over. Emily's family wasn't going to take kindly to the things we had done. The hardest part was yet to come. A few days later, Emily's mom showed up at our door. It was late, but there she was, standing in front of us like nothing had happened. She tried to act as though everything was fine, like the scene at our house had never occurred. She had no apology, no remorse, just the same condescending attitude. "I'm here to talk," she said with a forced smile. "I don't know what's gotten into you two, but this can't go on. I'm your mother, Emily. I deserve respect." Emily's face flushed with anger. She stood in front of me, a protective stance, her body language screaming that she wouldn't back down. "Respect is earned, Mom," Emily said, her voice steady but firm. And you've done nothing to earn it. You've belittled me, you've criticized me, and you've made me feel worthless for years. I'm done pretending like this is okay." For a moment, there was silence. Her mother was taken aback, not expecting Emily to confront her so boldly. I could see the shock in her eyes, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for her to change. She just looked at Emily, her lips curling into a sneer. "You don't know what you're talking about," she hissed. "You're just being dramatic. You're overreacting. You're making a huge mistake." But Emily wasn't listening anymore. "No, Mom, I'm done with you. You don't get to control me anymore." That was the moment everything shifted. Emily's mother stood there, stunned and speechless, while Emily, my strong, courageous wife, took her first real step toward cutting the toxic ties that had bound her for so long. "Get out," Emily said, her voice calm but resolute. And for the first time in years, I saw Emily stand up for herself. For the first time, I saw her set a boundary and mean it. Her mother didn't even try to argue. She turned on her heel and walked away, leaving us standing there, finally free from the weight of her toxicity. But I knew that this wasn't the end. Do you think writing the family letters was the right move? Or would you have just gone no contact quietly? The weeks following that night with Emily's mother were a strange mix of relief and tension. Emily and I had made the decision to cut off her family completely. I knew it wasn't easy for her, but I could see the weight lifting off her shoulders. She wasn't burdened by the constant criticism and toxicity anymore, but the pain of what had happened, the years of hurt, was still there. It wasn't something she could just forget, no matter how much she wanted to move on. The most difficult part was that Emily still felt the loss of her parents, especially her father. Even though her mother had been the source of so much of the pain, she had always hoped her father would be different. He had never been the one to speak up or defend her, but Emily still hoped he would come around. I knew she was grieving not just the loss of the relationship with her mother, but the idea of the family she could never have. The idea of a father who supported her, who was proud of her, who loved her unconditionally. But there was no going back. After everything, there was no way to repair the damage they had done to her over the years, so we made the decision to write letters. Letters to Emily's parents, explaining the history of the emotional abuse she had endured and making it clear that we were drawing a line. The letters weren't meant to be cruel. They were meant to be honest, to set boundaries that we had never set before, and maybe to finally put an end to the constant turmoil. The letters went out, and the reactions started flooding in. At first, Emily's mother called, demanding an explanation. "You can't just cut me out of your life like this," she screamed. "I'm your mother. I've been there for you through everything. You owe me." But Emily wasn't having it. She calmly explained, again, the reasons for the no contact, how much she had suffered over the years, and how she could no longer allow her mom to disrespect her. The call ended with her mother hanging up, refusing to accept responsibility for any of the damage she had caused. Then came the email from her brother, the one I had feared. It was filled with accusations, the typical narcissistic blame shifting. He called Emily jealous, too sensitive, and told her she was ruining the family. He didn't care about the years of mistreatment. He just wanted to keep the peace, even if it meant ignoring the truth. Emily sat on the couch, reading the email through tear-filled eyes. I could feel her tension, her heartbreak. But this time, it was different. She wasn't going to apologize. She wasn't going to back down. "I'm done," she said, slamming the laptop shut. "I can't keep living in this lie. I can't keep pretending that they care when they don't." It was a moment of clarity. She had already made the decision. She was done with them. I could see that she had let go of the idea of ever getting the love and approval she had hoped for from her parents. And I couldn't have been prouder of her. She was finally free. But then came the conversation I had been dreading. Emily had to confront her father. After years of silence, she called him. She wanted him to understand that it wasn't just her mom that had hurt her. It was him too. It wasn't just her mother's actions that had caused the damage. It was the years of silence, the lack of support, and the failure to see her as an individual. The conversation lasted only 10 minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. Emily's father denied everything. He denied ever knowing what had been happening, denied the emotional abuse, and when Emily listed the ways in which he had let her down, he was silent. At the end of the conversation, Emily simply said, "I don't have parents anymore." It wasn't said with anger. It wasn't said with bitterness. It was said with finality. She hung up the phone, and in that moment, I knew she had done what she needed to do. There was no going back. Afterward, Emily sat quietly for a while, processing everything. She was still grieving the loss, but I could see it. She was moving on. She was ready to let go of the pain and focus on what was truly important. Us, our baby, and the future we were building. Meanwhile, I had to take care of my own family. The lies Emily's mother had told about me had spread. I had to explain myself to my own parents. It wasn't easy, especially since I knew they would never fully understand the situation. But after a long conversation, I cleared things up. I explained the full truth about the night her mother was kicked out, about the years of manipulation, and how I was simply protecting my wife. They didn't completely agree with my methods, but they understood. They supported me, and that was enough for me. As Emily and I prepared for the arrival of our baby, we focused on what really mattered. We focused on the love we shared, the life we were building together, and the family we were about to create. It wasn't going to be perfect. There would always be bumps in the road, but we knew we had each other. Do you believe cutting toxic family out completely is the right choice, even during major life events like having a baby?